In the tranquil village of Windlebrook, where stone cottages leaned kindly into one another and the air always smelled faintly of fresh bread and blooming marigolds, lived a stray dog named Brisker. Though no collar hung from his neck and no child called him their own, he was as much a part of the town as the fountain in the square or the bell in the chapel tower. Brisker was lean but healthy, covered in brown and gray fur with scraggly tufts that never seemed to grow evenly, and his eyes sparkled with the cunning of experience. Brisker's daily life was a gentle rhythm of routine. Each morning, as the sun stretched its golden arms over the thatched rooftops, he would weave through the cobbled streets, tail wagging like a lazy metronome. He'd start at the baker's shop, where young Lily and Tom would save him the crusts from the first loaves. Then to the dairy cart, where Miss Hanley always set aside a dish of milk. But it was the butcher, Mr. Tallow, who earned Brisker's true devotion, especially when bones were plenty. On one particular morning, brighter than usual and smelling of new beginnings, Brisker arrived at Miss Tallow's just as the shopkeeper was sweeping out sawdust and greeting the townsfolk. With a hearty laugh, Mr. Tallow reached into the window tray and flung a massive, meat-laden bone onto the ground. "For the king of the alleyways," he declared. Brisker caught it mid-air and didn't even stop to wag his tail. In thanks, she knew such a treasure must be enjoyed far from jealous eyes and greedy paws, clenching the bone tightly in his jaws. Brisker darted past the rows of open-air stalls and baskets of ripe peaches, past barking dogs chained near porches and startled chickens flapping in his wake. He ran with purpose, heading for the countryside that fringed the villagia place of open fields, chirping insects, and, most importantly, solitude. This wasn't a bone to be shared or nibbled in a corner. It deserved a grand feast, one free of interruption. At the edge of the village lay a narrow wooden bridge that spanned a lazy brook, and beyond it stretched fields speckled with dandelions and buzzing bees. Brisker often came here when he wanted to nap in peace or watch frogs leap from stone to stone. Today, however, he stopped on the bridge, panting slightly from his sprint, the great bone still gripped triumphantly between his teeth. The morning sun glimmered on the surface of the stream like molten silver. As he stood there catching his breath, Brisker glanced into the water. Perhaps out of habit or idle curiosity, what he saw made him freeze a dog, as scruffy and wild-eyed as himself, staring back from beneath the surface. At first he tilted his head in wonder, then noticed something even more startling. The dog below had a bone, and not just any bone, but a larger, richer one. Juicy and round, it seemed to shine with meaty perfection, almost too good to be real. Brisker narrowed his eyes, stepping closer to the edge of the bridge, his paws sliding slightly on the old planks. The dog in the water moved too, mirroring his every twitch. But Brisker's mind was already lost in a whirlwind of desire. The bone he had, while marvelous, now seemed small and less flavorful compared to the treasure below. What if he could have both? What if he could leap down, frighten the other dog, and take that superior prize? The longer he stared, the more convinced he became that the bone in the water was better. It glistened. It dripped with fat. It seemed to whisper to him in a voice only greed can understand. "You deserve more." Brisker's heart pounded, his legs tensed. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was feeling envy, hunger, want. The thought of losing such an opportunity made his paws itch and his tail stiffen. With a sudden, sharp bark muffled by the bone in his mouth, Brisker lunged. His powerful legs launched him toward the reflection with all the strength of a dog who believed that victory was certain and greed was just another form of courage. But the moment his mouth opened mid-air to snatch the phantom bone, his own bone slipped from his jaws. It tumbled through the air in slow, dreadful silence. There was a splash soft but final. The bone disappeared into the brook's clear current, sinking without resistance into the sandy bottom where it quickly vanished from sight. Brisker landed clumsily on the bridge's edge, his legs scrambling for grip, his jaw snapping shut on nothing but air and shadow. The reflection rippled and dissolved. The other dog was gone, and with it, the better bone and the real one were both lost. For a long, motionless moment, Brisker stood on the bridge, blinking at the surface that now reflected nothing but sky and branches. He did not bark. He did not move. He simply stared, stunned by how quickly triumph had turned into failure. The weight of loss, swift and absolute, settled over him like a cold wind. He had nothing, no bone, no reward. Just the sickly feeling in his belly where joy had been only moments before. Brisker sat down heavily, his shoulders sagging as the water below babbled on, unconcerned with the dreams it had just washed away. The bonereal, savory, perfect had been his. It had been his to enjoy, to savor under a shady tree or bury for later. But he had thrown it away for an illusion, an image, a lie his mind had conjured out of desire. And now, there was only emptiness. The sun crept higher, casting longer shadows from the bridge's railings onto the ground. Brisker remained still, chewing on nothing but regret. Birds chirped cheerfully around him, unaware or uncaring of his sorrow. Once again, he was a stray dog with no collar and no supper, left to fend for himself in a world that didn't often give second chances. Eventually, Brisker rose and walked slowly back across the bridge, head bowed, tail dragging behind him. The bridge that had once offered peace now seemed like a monument to his folly. Each step creaked beneath his paws like a quiet scolding. He no longer ran or sniffed or hunted. He simply walked, his body moving while his thoughts remained behind, swirling like leaves in the stream. As he reached the edge of the village, Brisker passed the bakery once more. Lily, with flour still smudged on her nose, spotted him and called out gently. "Brisker!" she chirped, tossing him a thick heel of warm bread. He caught it out of habit, but this time, he did not run. He sat right there on the cobblestone and chewed slowly, thoughtfully, as if remembering how much this simple gift truly meant. The taste was not bone, but it was filling. The warmth spread through his chest like sunlight. He looked up at Lily, who smiled and waved before returning to her chores. For the first time, Brisker wagged his tail, not out of excitement, but out of gratitude. His world had shrunk again, but this time, it felt manageable, safe. In the days that followed, Brisker's behavior changed. He still made his rounds, still greeted shopkeepers with wagging tail and hopeful eyes, but he no longer barked at other dogs' meals or tried to steal from carts. He waited his turn, took what was given, and walked away without glancing back. Other dogs noticed. Some young and foolish pups tried to mock him, asking why the cleverest dog in town now acted like a monk. Brisker said nothing. He only smiled a strange little dog smile and continued walking, his steps light, his mind quiet. The pups didn't understand, but one day, they would. The seasons turned. Spring gave way to summer, and then to the sleepy gold of autumn. Brisker grew grayer around the muzzle, slower in his legs, but quicker in his judgment. He had become a dog of patience, a watcher of the world rather than a chaser of illusions. One crisp morning, Brisker returned to the same wooden bridge. The brook still flowed, its waters clear and indifferent. He stood in the same spot and looked into the water, remembering the moment that had changed everything. But this time, when he saw his reflection, he only saw a tired but wise old dog holding no bone-just peace. As Brisker sat by the bridge one morning, his ears twitched at the sound of playful barking. A young pup barely past weaning trotted onto the bridge, tail wagging and eyes wide with curiosity. In his mouth was a small scrap of meat, clearly scavenged from a butcher's back alley. He paused, staring into the water just as Brisker had done long ago. Brisker didn't move, only observed. He could see the same flicker of temptation in the pup's eyes, the same hunger for more. The pup lowered his head, ready to leap, and Brisker gave a single, soft bark. Startled, the pup looked at Brisker, tail drooping slightly. The old dog padded over, slow but sure, and sat beside him. Without words, without growls or warnings, Brisker stared into the water beside the pup. Together, they looked at the reflection. The pup tilted his head, confused. But Brisker gave a slow wag of his tail, a gentle nudge of the nose to the meat in the pup's mouth, and then turned away. It was not a scolding, but a lesson. One passed not through barks or bites, but presence. The pup did not leap. Instead, he sat beside Brisker, gnawed on his small prize, and listened to the quiet brook. The two dogs watched birds fly overhead and leaves drift from trees. The moment passed, and a wiser choice was made. Not out of fear, but understanding. Brisker had become a teacher, not with lectures, but by living the truth he had learned the hard way. The pup licked his lips, then offered Brisker the last bite, which the old dog refused with a gentle blink. It was the pup's reward, earned and enjoyed. As days turned to weeks, more pups came to the bridge. Some came for naps in the sun, others for shared scraps or quiet walks. Brisker never boasted, never barked command. She simply existed as a calm presence, his lessons etched in the way he moved, the way he waited, the way he never chased the shadows again. His story, once known only to him and the brook, became whispered among the alley pups and the porch hounds. Brisker doesn't chase illusions, they'd say. He once did, but he learned. One morning, long after the first snow dusted the bridge in white, Brisker's spot by the water was empty. He had passed quietly in his sleep, under a tree he often napped beneath. The villagers found him curled in the grass, peaceful, content. They buried him near the brook, under a smooth stone carved with a single word, enough. And so the old dog's greatest lesson lived on, not in loud proclamations, but in the silent wisdom of choosing contentment over greed, reality over illusion, and peace over the restless hunger for more. Greed can make us blind to what we already have, leading us to lose everything while chasing illusions. Brisker's story teaches us that in our hunger for more, whether it's wealth, recognition, or material things, we often overlook the value of what we already possess. The dog's reflection in the water was never real, but his desire made it feel more appealing than the bone he held. This moment of temptation mirrors how we too can fall victim to chasing shadows, things that seem better only from a distance. In the end, the story urges us to appreciate the real, tangible blessings in our lives, rather than risk them for the false promises of something better. True wisdom lies not in having the most, but in recognizing when we have enough.